I just so deeply object to a lot of what you're saying, but at the root, I feel like there's a clear misunderstanding about the core values of feminism. You're saying that it's bitter women, or that it's not allowing men to be men anymore, or demonizing masculinity. I really don't agree with. I don't think there's any value in kind of glorifying toxic masculinity that we have now, with making it seem as though being a violent man or anything like that is appropriate. I think it's really damaging.
Would you be able to phrase it as a question? Sorry for the panel.
Oh, okay.
I can say a couple of things back and we can have a discussion about this. So first and foremost, you started by saying, I feel like. It's really important that we know what you think like, because a big problem is that people are thinking, are feeling, and they're not really thinking anymore. Secondly, you brought up toxic masculinity. I believe toxic masculinity exists, but it exists inside of radicalized feminists, right? Where they're thinking that they should be able to own and control society because they're marching in the street with pussy hats and saying that they demand justice for a free and fair election, like they did with Donald J. Trump. I don't like this trend where we're trying to turn men, and you call it, masculinity is masculinity. I like masculinity. Masculinity is actually the one thing that saved me in life. I was grateful to have my grandfather, who was the strongest example of what it means to be a man, right? And because of that, having that structure, it actually saved me because he taught me personal responsibility. He taught me to have a relationship with God, right? And yes, he's a man's man. He did everything with his hands. He worked on a sharecropping farm from the time he was 5 years old. Today, that archetype of what a man is being taught that there's something wrong with it, that there's something that's implicitly violent about being a man, and that's wrong. And I think the people that are harmed the most by it, by the way, are women. Women are harmed the most. When you break down men and strong fathers, we are the ones that suffer the most.
And also, can I just say that, you know, men commit suicide at faster rates than women. Women actually live longer than men. Most men are actually in prison, and most men, more than women, are homeless. So
women graduate more from college. In what way are we suffering? What statistic do you feel that women are suffering and men aren't? Because there might be a meninist. There might need to be a meninism movement.
You have a female prime minister.
I would just say, I mean, there's a lot of things to address there, but to begin with, what you say about having a strong grandfather, a male figure, if you're saying that you've internalized these things, these messages that he taught you, then surely there's nothing inherently masculine about those qualities. I mean, I don't understand how you're defining masculinity.
I don't understand how you're defining it.
Yeah, why
don't you define it?
Why don't you define it?
Because you're the one that so you should define what masculinity means to you.
Well, I mean, it depends. I would say masculinity now, obviously just being a social construct, literally nothing more than a set of expectations that are placed on someone.
So then how can you call it, if it's a social construct, how can you call it toxic?
Because social constructs can be toxic. If you have a patriarchal society that is sending a message that men need to be dominant, or they need to be, I know you don't like the word violent, but I think there's something violent about it.
About masculinity?
No, about the sort of masculinity that we have now, this toxic.
What makes that a construct, though? In order for something to be a construct, it has to begin as a norm, which a majority amount of people follow. A majority
it doesn't.
Of
if
people
you have a patriarchal society that is sending messages that men need to possess certain qualities, and I believe the qualities that they're suggesting should be adopted are bad.
Which quality? I just need to know what exactly you've seen when you've said that is an example of toxic masculinity.
I think men feeling that they need to dominate spaces physically and speaking over women, interrupting women, belittling them.
Yeah.
Do you see how good I'm being?
I mean, you can.
So just a question. So you just said when men interrupt and dominate spaces. Were you a toxic feminist when you interrupted me when I was on stage?
No, I was interrupting something.
I'm just asking.
But I fundamentally don't believe it.
I'm just asking because you're saying that somebody interrupting someone is now a symbol of toxic masculinity. You just interrupted me on stage, so are you a toxic feminist?
I wasn't interrupting you because I didn't.
You went bullshit.
Yeah, because you were talking bullshit. because you're talking bullshit. I didn't interrupt you because you're a woman. I interrupted you because I didn't
Maybe-
believe what you were saying. It's not that I didn't believe
But
what you were
maybe
saying
that's what
because
men
of
do
your
sometimes.
femininity.
Is it
I
possible
was
that men
disagreeing with
sometimes
your
interrupt because they disagree with what women are saying and not because they're toxic masculinity in the air? Like, do you get what I'm saying? Is that you're coming up with terms and sometimes people just interrupt. I'm fine with the fact that you interrupted me. It happens all the time and I'm not holding that against you. I'm just using it to prove a point that you've created an entire concept around when men interrupt women, but you literally just interrupted me and you don't identify as yourself as a toxic feminist.
No, because I interrupted you on the basis that I didn't agree with the politics you're espousing, both of you.
Well, maybe men
Not
are
because I don't
disagree
believe
with
in
what you're saying.
because you're a woman. The fact that you're a woman is completely irrelevant to me.
But maybe
what
it's
you're
irrelevant
both
to men as well when they interrupt people.
That's
Men
not the
interrupt
case.
other men. Men interrupt
That's
women.
not the case.
We're
There is
society.
a culture of men's voices being valued more than women's.
What is your metric for
Give
this?
us one piece of data.
Yeah,
One.
like a data.
Any piece
You can't
of data.
just say there's a culture of men interrupting women. What's your data point for
Any
this?
kind of interpretivist data where you're looking at interactions, at dynamics, you can see. I mean, what do you want me to say? Like a
Like a
statistic?
fact?
Yeah.
Any fact.
Any kind of
How about
any
the
kind
stuff
of
Dominique
analysis
A
or
recent huge
observation of
cultural example,
interaction.
maybe?
So can I ask a question? Do you think we live in a patriarchy?
Yes.
Why do women live longer than men? Why are men more likely to commit suicide? Why do women
I'll tell
compose
you- I'll
50+%
tell
of
you
college
Why do we
graduates?
control 89% of the spending power within households if men are the ones that are going out and making all of the money,
Because
as we like to
women
say?
have the sole responsibility of caring for the house and the children.
So it's
they're
a
not
patriarchy that
working.
allows women a lot of responsibility.
Within a household, within a certain sphere, not a powerful one. The household is not
Then
a
why are
powerful
majority of
sphere.
business startups women, majority of master's degrees, and majority of
And
doctorate
also,
degrees
can
in
I
the
say,
States?
the thing about women living longer, married women live the least long. Unmarried women live longest because they do not have the responsibilities, the emotional labor of being
Marriage
with a
is
man.
emotional labor.
Pardon?
Marriage is emotional labor for women, and that's
That's a great point.
Well, no, because the way that women support men, like, it's a huge
thought we
burden.
live in a
They support
patriarchy.
each
I'm
other.
not saying no, they don't. No, they don't. I'm talking
But so
about.
this is sort of, I appreciate the discussion that we're having. You're such a perfect reason for
Because
why I
you're
just
all
could never be a
emotion.
feminist,
No
because
facts.
everything that I just couldn't. It's like you don't really know why you're calling it toxic. You did the
No,
exact
I
same
do.
thing,
I
but
know
you decided that
exactly
when
why I'm
men
calling it
interrupt, it's
toxic.
because you're a woman. But you decided
No,
that when you
it's
interrupt,
not.
it's just because you had a differing
You asked
opinion.
me for one example.
I know,
of
I know,
toxic
I know. And then
masculinity,
you
and
say
I
stuff
told
about the
people
marriage and
interrupt.
breakdown as an emotional labor. There are women, just so you know, that aspire to get married and have children and stay at home and raise
that's
good
okay.
children. And
I
that's
agree.
okay.
It's completely
So, but why are you now making it seem like that puts us in a position that's less than man? Want to create a society? Be the person that raises every individual that's in society. Feminism has made it seem like there's something wrong with being a mother, that there's something wrong with being a wife. And everything that you just said is that. You have. It's not emotional labor. I want to have children. I want to raise my children. I don't want to be the CEO of a company and not have a husband. And that's not what I aspire to. And that's why feminism is having a hard time with a lot of women who are realizing that when they give up everything that they naturally want in life to be a feminist, they end up miserable and alone.
No, I'm not.
You're sitting there because of feminism.
No, I'm not. Please don't tell me that I'm sitting here
I
because
can't
I'm
wait to
standing.
talk to you.
I'm sitting here because I worked
You'll-
hard.
you'll be
I was
next.
personally responsible. I'm not sitting here because of feminism. No, I am not sitting here because of any feminist.
Well,
trust me.
So can I ask? Can a man
Yeah, but
ask a question?
feminism is supposed to be about choice, and what radical feminism is actually doing is taking away that choice and making
It's
women feel
not.
bad
It's-
about wanting to maybe be the traditional view of what a woman is. There's nothing wrong with having a choice to do both. I don't really understand your point.
No, I agree. Feminism isn't trying to destroy the family. Women can happily be mothers, and they can.
You just said it's
be
emotional
wives.
labor to be married.
It is in some way. There is an imbalance where men.
It's
are going,
not. I don't feel that way. So does that make which one of us is less of a woman? We have different opinions.
What do you mean? Which of us is less?
You're saying that it is, and I'm saying that it's not. We have a differing opinion, and the reason why I don't like feminism because it basically tells us that we have to feel this way,
No,
that
it
we have to
doesn't.
feel
No, it
bitter
doesn't.
towards
It's
men,
just
towards
trying to
husbands,
make
towards
you
marriage,
aware of
towards
your
children, and
choices.
that's why I'm trying to let you know the feminist movement is considered very radicalized because there are many women, especially conservative women, who just don't feel that way. We don't feel burdened by children and marriage.
Can I give you some facts though to support this? No, you don't want to hear from a man. Okay. Wait, you see how
Just
things get
weird.
really dangerous and you start to generalize men and women all of a sudden, like you did?
I just wanted to continue the conversation
ahead.
that I was
Okay,
having
you could
with
talk to
Candace,
Candace.
without you jumping
We'll
in
talk
with
about
your
facts later. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I understand that some women want a family and they want to be mothers. I completely respect that. But all feminism is doing is telling you that you do have a choice. And I don't believe radical feminism is pushing women into hating the family. It's just suggesting that maybe this doesn't have to be your lot. And some women have internalized values that make them think that this is what they want when really they might not.
So you can
I
read
really
minds.
do want a husband and children one day.
Okay,
So,
that's fine,
but
and
what
I
I'm saying to you is
respect
the reason
that.
why I don't like feminism is because feminists think feminism is mandatory. The second you find out that a girl doesn't identify as a feminist, you're up here and you're asking a bunch of questions. I don't like the feminist movement. I think it's become very toxic and very hostile towards men. If you believed in the equality that men and that women should be able to think whatever we wanted, you wouldn't be debating me right now. You'd say, well, more power to you because you'd be a true feminist. But you're not. You're trying to...
I think that you're belittling other women.
I'm
by
not belittling them.
by not
You're allowed to be a
engaging in
feminist. I'm not
feminism.
telling you you can be a feminist. You could buy a pussy hat if you left today, and I wouldn't mind. I've never had an issue with people that are feminists. I have an issue when people tell me that I now have to be a feminist or that it's complete bullshit when I say that I think it's harmful to keep telling men that masculinity is wrong. Masculinity is a component of being a man. I think a society needs and thrives on strong men. There's never been a society without strong men. There's never been a society without strong men. And because I support that, you're upset and you're calling bullshit. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with strong men? Why does that make you upset?
I just think that the values, you referenced the Gillette advert, all it was saying was, the message was fundamentally just stop being violent, just...
No, it
No, it wasn't.
No,
In your view.
Little toddlers.
There were parts
Boys
that-
will be boys. Boys tend to be reckless. They tend to punch each other and wrestle each other. That's a healthy, necessary part of the child development process. Trying to demonize that in the parental guidelines that Gillette was trying to have in a 30-second to a minute ad is toxic feminism,
That is toxic
attacking
feminism.
toxic masculinity. So let me give you some examples super quick. So you say, that's not what feminism wants. The predominant viewpoint in the university now in the States and the UK is an anti-male posture, whether it be papers that literally say abolish men, whether it be books that say the problem with men. You're looking at me funny. The Huffington Post publishes at least a weekly piece that says that men should have a less powerful role in
Cancel
society.
white men.
Cancel white men is a common theme. The Me Too movement. Oh, so you agree with it? Okay.
The men have done
Wait,
a
can
lot
you repeat what you
historically.
just said?
They've won every single war, every freedom that we have in
Can you
society
repeat what
is
you
because
just
of
said?
men.
I said it's because white men have historically done so much shit, they're just
So
asking
you
you to
do
stop
agree
for
with the
once.
anti-male posture. So your
No,
true
I
radical
don't. I
feminism
don't
comes
agree
out
with it.
after 10 minutes of cross-examination. Before you said, I have no problem with men. Now you
Now
said
you're
it's
saying
because
you
white
do.
men have done a lot of shit.
Yeah, but-
Now we get to revealing who you really are,
But
which
that
is
is
a
what
hateful,
feminism is.
angry person.
They just hate men. There is no other
No,
platform.
They don't hate men. They're just,
You just
there's
said-
no problem. There is no problem with analysing the actions of men in history and condemning them.
You mean like
What
winning
about all the
World
good
War II?
ones?
You know the ones
What
who
about all
died
the good
for our
ones?
freedom. So that's wrong. We can't do that.
Like defeating the
Or,
Nazis?
or people, men who had inventions, anything that men have invented, we can't use anymore.
Slavery
So there-
wasn't
there's-
ended in America because
no, there's
women were
positives and
fighting.
negatives.
It's complete hyperbole.
What about all the good? What about all the good things? Everything that we have in society, every war that was fought and won was because of men. Do you ever think
Half
about
the
that?
wars were unnecessary anyway. I mean, wars
they
that we
happened,
fought
though.
and
Now
Now
we're
won.
spiraling.
Yeah,
Now we're
and
spiraling.
But they
guns
happened
by
and men
men.
fought in them.
So what they won was that they started unnecessarily.
Yeah, women have
They
never
took the
started
contr-
wars, but wars have never been fought over women in this country. That never happened, Henry VIII. Right? What's the point?
Because he was an adulterer. I mean, that's a terrible example.
Do you
What-
think
wanted
that
to
that
shag
women? Let me
around
ask you a
and have a
question.
male
Do you
heir.
think
That's an
women can
awful
have done
example.
anything wrong, or that women can do anything wrong? Like, would you have been okay if there was like a strict razor commercial like about toxic femininity? Would that have been okay with you?
Can you tell me what you think toxic femininity
Accusing
is?
men of things that never happen and
Yeah.
calling it sexual
Like what?
assault? Like Brett Kavanaugh?
He is an awful man and a rapist.
Wait, he's a what? He's an honorable
awful man. An
Hon-
awful man.
Honorable?
I said awful.
Prove it.
What?
Yeah, facts. Name one fact of anything awful he's ever done.
He raped someone.
because
You mean-
she said
A
so.
fa- yeah, show me
wait,
some
hold on.
evidence.
Because she said
That
so.
wasn't even a trial in a court. It was in front of a.
So
bunch
why
of-
isn't there a trial in the court? Why
No.
didn't she go file it?
Why didn't she file a police report?
Because
She
there
can't
was no
remember the
evidence.
Date, time, place, no
We
witnesses.
have this culture culture, this toxic culture where women aren't
The same
believed.
culture leads to
Okay.
people like Jussie Smollett then faking a hoax because, you know, you have to be a
Bingo.
victim. No, you can't then sit here and say that without facts that you can say he's a rapist, but then Jussie Smollett can get away with saying there was people shouting, this is Trump country, we're going to beat you up without facts. You either have facts for both, or you can't just lead them.
Why did he feel necessary to do that?
Okay,
Because
can
he
I
wants
ask
to
you-
start a race war.
Evident that
Can I
there's
just,
He
I
wants
want
to
to
put
ask you a
people
last
against
question.
each other.
I'm gonna ask you a question. Do you think, so now we're getting, because now this is why I don't support feminism, by the way, because do you believe in the concept that women should just be believed absent facts? Because that was the Christine Blasey Ford thing. There was not a single fact. Do you think that women should be believed absent facts if they say that they were raped and assaulted?
Not without fact, but I think there should be a culture of belief. If someone comes forward and says, a man or a woman comes forward and says something has happened to them, that they should be given the time to be heard and to
She was
speak
heard.
of their experience.
Okay, but I
not
just
by
hold
a
on.
court, not by a
Rule of
judge,
law.
not by legal professionals.
Why didn't she submit a police report?
At the time,
She
She
never
still
did.
hasn't.
because there is a culture of disbelief because she was in an
But she had no
important
evidence.
position.
There's no statute of limitations for rape in Maryland. She could file a police report today. It's because she made up the entire thing.
No, she didn't.
So why doesn't she know the time, the place, no corroborating witnesses? Her story changed 8 times. None of her friends said it ever happened or she ever talked about it once before. Everything about her life story changed at least 6 times.
And
And 2 of the women that came forward and said that something happened are actually under criminal conviction for making up the entire thing. They never met her once before. This was a con job to try to displace United States
It
Supreme
was a
Court
political
justice.
hit job. It really was. But I do want to say this to you, and something for you to just consider, because I think we should wrap this up, because I don't think you're ever going to not be a feminist, and I'm never going to be one, right? But it's really important when you start getting into that slippery slope of believe women, and I talk about this particularly to Minority America, because we've learned our lesson the hardest with this, and I think radicalized feminism, when I did an interview, I said it was the closest thing to white supremacy I've ever seen is radicalized feminism. The concept of just believing a woman because she said something is the direct thing that led to all of our ancestors getting lynched in America. When white women would just say that something happened, okay? And we were supposed to magically believe it. Our ancestors were then chased after, put into cars, Emmett Till, everything that happened in America happened because white women should just be believed. So you will never, ever, ever hear me stand behind a radicalized concept like just believe women because they're crying. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us today.
Thank you.
Would you like to say something?